And Ruby's here. Hi, Ruby. Okay. And let me make sure I stopped recording. I've got the recording going, and I'm sharing my desktop, and we're ready to go. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Let's try this one more time. My name is Lucie Gray, and this is Tech Talks number 12. This is the 12th in a series of webinars going through the end of August that will help teachers become more digitally savvy. And tonight's topic is redesigning lessons for the digital age. And this is a pretty weighty topic, and there's going to be lots of information and resources for you. And I'm hoping that you all will also weigh in and tell me what your particular needs and preferences are in terms of lesson planning, and maybe I can help you brainstorm a little bit. Our slides are available at bit.ly/techtalks12slides, all lowercase. You can also find them in our Google Classroom, and all of the archives from previous webinars and resources that are supplementary can also be found in our Google Classroom. This is how you get, before we get there, thank you to Rio for putting this together in the EdRising program. We're really grateful to be here and to have this series to benefit all teachers who are interested. You can invite anyone you'd like to have join us anytime, more the merrier. I am Lucie Gray. I am a former classroom teacher, technology coach turned consultant. And next Monday, I start a new job as a director of educational technology at a private school near where I live in Illinois. I also have done a lot of adjunct work with pre-service and in-service teachers. And you can find me on Twitter at Elementus. And here's my email address if you'd like to confer with me at any time. I'm here to be your personal tech coach. If you need advice or resources, shoot me a question. I'm happy to meet with you in Zoom or answer a question via email, whatever works for you. Between now and I think the end of September is my time with you in general. We're using the Zoom platform tonight, and this is being recorded, so if you miss anything or have to leave early, it will be uploaded later on tonight or tomorrow morning. There is a chat room, and you're more than welcome to ask questions in there, and I'll pause at certain times and take a look at your questions. You can also unmute yourself and ask a question if you'd like to, if you prefer to do it that way. I prefer if people are muted for the most part during the webinar so that we don't have any interruptions and dogs barking in the background and that sort of thing. So that's about our platform. If you want to know more about our series and the previous topics that we've covered, please go to this link, bit.ly/techtalkswithlucie, and you'll see a flyer that we posted last April with the entire series and all the topics and dates. And so you can see what we've covered so far and what's coming up. I think we're covering research, digital citizenship, collaborative PD, and classroom management in the next couple weeks. Those are our last 4 webinars. So, perhaps some of these are of interest to you, perhaps some are not. This way you can kind of pick what is the most valuable to you. Our Google Classroom is a digital space where I'm posting the slides, the recording, questions, and that sort of thing for you to answer if you want to, as well as additional resources to what you'll see tonight. And I'm really, I go to town when I'm looking for resources on a topic, so you'll see a ton of stuff in there. Pick and choose what is valuable to you, but it's basically a standing resource for you post this series where you can always go back and reference things that we've talked about and that sort of thing. So there's a lot in there. Don't feel like you have to look at every single thing. Tonight we're going to dig through the resources for tonight, but that's where they're stored at classroom.google.com. When you go to Google Classroom, you have to enter a code to get into our particular setting. And the code is YXFLGJ7. So you go to classroom.google.com. There's a plus sign in the upper right-hand corner. And you click on that and you'll see enter code, or it will say join class is what it says. And you put this code in and it will let you into our settings. So if you have not gone, if this is your first time with us and you've not gone into Google Classroom, that's how you'll get into it. I can review this again at the end if you'd like to and show you how to do it, but it's pretty easy to do it. The one caveat is you need to use your personal Gmail address if you have one. It's most likely not going to work with your school Gmail address because your school's administrator has to allow users to work outside of the school's domain in order for you to join My Google Classroom. And by default, it's turned off. And so you probably don't have the permissions within your school settings to come into somebody else's Google Classroom and work there. It's fixable and it's easy to fix, but for the time being, if I would use a personal Gmail address and get in there. All this stuff will be, it's not going to go away. I'm leaving it up indefinitely. You can always access it at any time going forward. So today we're going to review a little bit about last week's session, which I misspelled there, and we're going to talk about the ISTE standards and then talk about lesson planning tips and strategies and tools and resources. And if you have any Q&A, we can do it at the end or interspersed with everything. We've talked about the ISTE standards before, and if you're not familiar with them, these links and these slides are clickable. So you can go check them out. There are standards from the International Society for Technology and Education for students and for teachers. They've been revamped in the last couple of years, and I think they're pretty good. So if you want to see what teachers should be able to do and students should be able to do, take a look at these in your copious spare time, and you may want to figure out how you're addressing them in the lessons that you're teaching going forward. And we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight as well. So the ISTE standards that we're going to be talking about in general are you're improving your practice by learning from and with others and exploring proven and promising practices that leverage technology to improve student learning. You are dedicating time to collaborating with everyone here and exploring resources and sharing ideas. We're also learning through lesson plan design how to create authentic learner-driven activities and environments that recognize the differences in how students learn. And then you're using, by participating in this webinar, you should be able to facilitate learning with technology to support student achievement. So I wanted to do something kind of fun tonight that has nothing really to do with what this topic is, but I thought it was such a cool tool that I wanted to show you what this was. So there's a tool out there called Autodraw, and I want to show you, it's from Google, actually, and it's so much fun, and I think you could probably use this in a lesson somehow. Maybe we can talk about that. If you want to try it on your own computer right now, you can do it. But this is, it's an AI experiment. It says somewhere here, and I don't know what that means exactly, but this is kind of an experimental tool that Google has developed, and I think it has some educational implications. And so you get a kind of a piece of paper in the middle and some tools on the left, and there are 3 lines on the left-hand side that show you, directions and shortcuts and what this is all about. And what is so cool about this, it's kind of magical. If you click on the Autodraw tool and pick a color, and then you just draw something like a circle, it brings up, I don't know if you see this at the top, but it brings up all these objects that kind of resemble what I just drew. So it thinks I'm drawing like a soccer ball, perhaps, and I can, I didn't want to do that. I'm going to undo that. So there's my soccer ball. I can draw a triangle, and it thinks I'm trying to draw a tent. So what's kind of funny about this, so you can, I think you can select these and you can move them around. And you could make graphics for slides like the slides I'm using tonight. Your students could draw pictures to illustrate, digital books they're making, or to put into Google Doc for a report. there are lots of different ways you could do it. So you don't have to worry about finding your own graphics. You can create them yourself here. So I thought this was kind of a fun, cool tool. Has anybody ever seen this before? Oh, Ruby. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a reward time at the end of the day. Yeah, Ruby, you could use it as a reward, but I'd like to see you incorporate this into a lesson. That's what I don't think technology should be seen as a reward necessarily. Like I tend to try to move away from that. I know that you're working with special ed kids, but like technology is a tool that we use like a pencil. And so I want you to think about how you can use technology in what you do to help the students be more creative, or to learn content in new ways, or to make productivity in activities in the classroom more efficient for you and the kids. So I would think about like if you're doing a geometry lesson, maybe can you like let's say you're working with young kids, like have them draw a square, or draw objects that are square shaped or something, and make some sort of game out of it. Like, I don't know if you remember Sesame Street, like 3 of these things belong together, one of them doesn't, that game. I don't know if you guys are as old as I am, but I remember seeing Sesame Street when I was like 3. And they had this particular game where you had to figure out what thing was similar and what things were different. Maybe you could have your kids design something like that. So think about how you could use this as a very simple, easy drawing tool and incorporate it into your curriculum somehow. Now, to share it, yeah, use it as an icebreaker, yeah, in the classroom, group projects, yeah. Or maybe you read directions to them and they have to guess what you think it is. Like maybe you read a riddle to them and they have to listen and think about what it might be, and they draw a picture of it on their computers, and then they show it to you to see if they got it right. Something like that. So you can share this creation. I can copy the link. So you could actually go in here and see what it looks like. I'm not sure what it'll look like on your perspective. Or I can share it on Google+, which is Google's version of Facebook, kind of. Or I could share it on Twitter, which is kind of fun. I'm thinking too, if you do Control-click on here, you can save the picture as well. So I can save it to my desktop. And let me go look at my desktop and see what it looks like. There it is. And there's the picture. So you could take this file and you could put it into a Google Doc. You could put it into books. I think you use Book Creator. Book Creator is a tool that allows you to. It's an app for Android and for Apple devices, but it's also a web-based tool now. And so you can create books, and it's really easy to use. Like little kids can use it. You can add drawings like this. You can put audio, video, and create a digital book that you could share with parents or whomever, or with other classmates. So anyway, I just thought this was kind of a fun tool. Now, this is totally an aside because Ruby spotted this somewhere on my computer. But this is Paperly, and this has nothing to do with anything. But if you're interested, Paperly takes, just to answer your question quickly, Paperly takes, let's see if I can get logged in here. I'm logged in from a different Twitter account, I think. Let me go to, when am I logged in for Twitter? It makes a digital newspaper for me that auto-publishes based on things that come in my Twitter feed. So that's my Twitter feed. But Paperly, I should be able to log in with it from my Twitter account. Let's see. I don't know why it's going here. Okay, let me log out. Sign out. Sign in, and I'll give you the link to this too. So I use this to publish kind of a daily newspaper of resources, and I just think it's the best thing since sliced bread. And it's sent out on Twitter every day, so you can find it on Twitter. But you can also, and this is the one that I think you'll find the easiest. You can also get it by email too. So, so based on certain feeds that I've directed towards this, it will populate it with content for educators and send it out on Twitter every day, or you can put your email address into it and get an email address. So that's what Paperly is, Ruby. It's a cool tool that I use to kind of share interesting finds with people. All right. So anyway, I thought Autodraw was kind of a fun warm-up for tonight to think about how we can design lessons that are a little bit more interesting, that take advantage of the affordances of ed tech in our classrooms. So, you know, I want you to think about how technology can make things happen in your classroom that otherwise it couldn't. What are the affordances of ed tech that allow things to happen that you couldn't otherwise do with other tools? That's kind of the driving question here. So I wanted to show you this blog post in this video. This is one of my favorite blogs. It's Cult of Pedagogy. And Jennifer Gonzalez is the author of the blog, and she saw this video that's kind of disturbing in some ways. The language is a little rough. I'm gonna warn you, my iPad is doing things. And I'm gonna pause this for a second. So this is a kid, I don't know where this is. This is a kid, a high school teacher, a kid who starts haranguing his teacher about what's going on in the classroom. And he's asked to leave the room, but not before kind of saying some comments that I think we should keep in mind. And I'm going to turn this up so you can hear it. Make sure you can hear it. If you can't hear it, let me know in the chat. But this kid's in trouble, and he's being asked to leave the room. But he's right.
Freaking lady, go off on kids, because they don't freaking get this crap. If you would just get up and teach them instead of handing them a freaking packet, yo. There's kids in here who don't learn like that. They need to learn face to face. You're just getting mad because I'm pointing out the obvious, and you're choosing. No, I'm not wasting your time. I'm telling you what you need to do. You want kids to come into your class, you want them to get excited for this, you got to come in here, you got to make them excited. You want a kid to change and start doing better, you got to touch his freaking heart. Can't expect a kid to change if all you do is just tell him. You gotta take this job serious. This is the future of this nation. And when you come in here, like you did last time, and make a statement about, oh, this is my paycheck, indeed it is. But this is my country's future and my education.
Can you go outside, please?
But there's a limit. When I'm not bitching, but simply making an observation.
Okay.
And now I will leave. You're welcome. And if you would like, I'll teach you a little more so you can actually learn how to teach a freaking class. Because since I got here, I've done nothing but read packets. So don't try and take credibility for teaching me jack.
So that's kind of hard to see, right? We don't want to think that teachers are being indifferent to kids' needs, and we also hope that our students are not going to get up in the middle of class and walk out like that, right? But he was, you know, he was on to something. You saw all the desks in rows, and he's talking about how he's given a large packet of work to do all the time. And what's lacking is the engagement piece and thinking about how we can involve students in their own learning. And so my point with this is that I think technology can change that. We don't want learning to be passive like it was in this particular video. And, you know, he was disrespectful and disrupting, as Jennifer points out in her blog post. But this is something we have to think about. How do we reach our students? So anyway, I found this to be really powerful. and something I think about when we're designing lessons and how we can use technology to do that. If you want to see the whole blog post, it's in the resources in our Google Classroom. So before we get going here further, I want to know, how are you planning lessons? How, and maybe you're not in the classroom yet, maybe you are in the classroom. Are you required? I'd like to know a little bit from you guys. Are you required to use a particular template, or do you prefer a particular style of lesson planning? Yeah. Isn't it interesting that adults are tired of packets too, right? So what are you guys using when you do your lesson plans for Rio or for wherever you're teaching? Tell me a little bit about that. You can unmute and chat with me.
Okay, this is Kimberly. Currently at my school, there's not a standard or template for lesson plans. The teachers just turn in their own lesson plans. And I use the template that I had from my old school district out of state.
Okay.
And at my old school, like, there was a standard, like everyone's lesson plans were the same as far as the setup, the template.
Okay.
But here it's not like that. Everyone just turns in whatever for a lesson plan.
Okay. And do you feel like your administrators are checking your lesson plans all the time?
I don't, because on too many occasions I get these emails, oh, where are your lesson plans? Because I like to do my lesson plans 2 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
Just so I'm like not running behind. Yeah. And too many times my administrator will send emails saying, oh, I didn't get your lesson plans. And I'm like, I gave them to you like a week ago. So that just lets me know you can't be paying attention to them or following them.
I think it's really interesting. When I taught in Chicago Public Schools, we had to turn them in, and we had to write really detailed things, and we had to time them to state standards. This is pre-Common Core, and it was, I would spend all Sunday doing it at least, and it was torture. And in real life doesn't fit into boxes, right? And sometimes you need more time to teach a concept, or you want to go back and reteach something. So. Right. So those typical planners that you might buy at the teacher store, they don't really lend themselves to that. And so I went from a very structured school setting to working at a very progressive private school. And they never asked for lesson plans. They wanted to know your curriculum, and they wanted you to develop stuff yourself. They gave us a lot of autonomy to design our activities and that sort of thing, and to kind of plot things out. But it was very loosey-goosey. And I think there's something in between. Like, I think the lesson planning process should be for you. It's to benefit you. It's not a checklist thing for your administrator, right?
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah. And so when you trust teachers to do their job and to be creative, then you can let them do their lesson planning and not have to check it all the time too. Right?
And I also agree with you about, like, you never have enough time to hit every single thing, and then for you to have to change it every week, to me, that's just not realistic, especially if you get interrupted all the time. I'm a special ed teacher, so there's always this stuff where your students are interrupted. They have to go to this class, they have to go get therapy for this and that, so your time is always like interrupted or shortened. So you might be on a lesson, and then with our kids, it takes them a while to get a concept. They're not going to get it in a week, not even 2 weeks, a lot of them. So I think that is...
it should be for you more than anything,
it should be for me. Yeah.
And I found that back when I was a beginning teacher, there was a lot of gotcha. If they walked in and you weren't on your schedule doing a lesson that you said you were going to do at that time.
Yeah.
They liked that, or they didn't like it, but they liked it, and they enjoyed catching you, I guess. I just don't think it's very natural. So I should have brought some water up here with me, but anyway, my point is that there are different approaches. There's no one way to do it. And so tonight we're going to talk about some different approaches. Some may work for you, some may not. And then we'll talk about tools that you could use for doing your lesson plans. And we'll talk about places where you can find existing lessons, which I think might make your life easier. So those are kind of our 3 buckets for tonight. Ruby is saying that she was not yet required to use a template, and there's a new principal who's going to bring one in, and there's a district one too, and you have to load it on Friday evening on a folder on the internet. Wow. Well, at least you get it done by Friday evening, then you can have your weekends. And they're used for, and at Laura's school, they're used for evaluating lessons. Okay. And you try to create plans that convert prescribed curriculum into mostly digital resources. Okay. And Ruby also says that, that's okay. That's a nice idea. You print out a copy of your thing and keep it by your door so that they can look at it when they come to observe you and that sort of thing. Okay. That makes sense. So some of these things I think will be useful to you. Some of them may not, but any feedback that you have or comments on this, I'd be really interested in knowing. So the first one we're going to look at is the 5 E's. And I don't know where this originated from, but I brought this up first because, and I'll put the link in the chat for you to make it easy for you to look at too. There are a couple of different blog posts on this site about this. And this is the one I wanted to focus on. So TCEA is like the ISTE chapter for Texas. You have one in Arizona called AZTE, A-Z-T-E-A. TCEA is Texas's group. And the guy that's in charge of professional development for them writes a blog here, and he's talking about the 5E model, which I've never heard of before. I don't know where it came from, but I kind of like this. So the E's refer to engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. And so it's pretty simplified. You talk about how you're going to do different things based on those 5 E's, what the technology connection is, how they're going to leverage technology, and then what success looks like if they're able to do this. And so I thought this was a pretty simple format for doing it. And so anyway, this gives you an example of what somebody using the Texas standards, which are TEKS, they have their own set of standards, other than Common Core and that sort of thing. And I guess they must not be using the next generation science standards. So you can go through here and see a sample lesson of how somebody in Texas might do it, but maybe you could adopt it in your neck of the woods. So this is the 5E way, or 5E plus T. I don't know what T is. Maybe it's the text. I don't know. So this is one example that I thought you guys might find interesting. I don't know if it's my favorite one out of the ones I'm going to show you. And then some standard models for planning your curriculum, and I bet you all have probably heard of this, is Understanding by Design. Grant Wiggins and Jay McTeague are the founders of this model. And ASCD has been a partner with them, publishing all sorts of resources that you'll see on this page related to it. You can buy books, but they also have articles and things on it. And Understanding by Design is sometimes also referred to as backwards design. And you start with essential ideas or essential questions that you want students to know, and then you work backwards from it. And this takes, a lot of schools will subscribe to this as a school-wide initiative. And there's a lot of training you can go through with it. It's not as simple as it looks, but it's something that it leads to deeper learning because, okay, so Laura, how have you guys used UBD?
We typically, they encourage all the teachers to use the UBD format. I teach in a CTE program, so we're kind of using the backwards design and coupling it with project-based learning.
Okay. So it goes.
It's a lot.
Yeah, isn't it? It's pretty time-consuming, isn't it?
It is.
And some schools are doing, maybe in conjunction with this, another term that you may hear is curriculum mapping. The school that I'm moving to on Monday uses something called Rubicon Atlas, where everybody, it's not individual lesson plans per se. I guess you could put them in there, but it's kind of an overall plan for your year and how you're scheduling it, like, you know, how many weeks it's going to take and that sort of thing. So you can see as a school how things fit together. So I think this kind of goes hand in hand. I mean, there's so many different flavors, and is there one way of doing it that's best? No, I don't think there is. I think it depends on what your goals are. I like this because it makes teachers think, and it's expecting teachers to be designers of curriculum to a certain extent. Whereas there are a lot of schools who don't think teachers are capable of creating their own curriculum and designing their own learning experiences. And so I think this is, I like to see teachers, I like to have high expectations of teachers, and I think this allows for that, right? Don't you think, Laura?
I do. One of the things that I know at UBD and project-based both are supposed to address more readily is the difference between, say, my morning class and my afternoon class, where it's completely different personalities and learning styles. So sometimes I can get bogged down in that base of, you know, the backwards design. I know where I want to be and I know how I want to get there, but it doesn't work for that group of students. So it's almost more time consuming to do it twice, but it is worth it.
Okay, that's good to know. I think when you give kids some choice in things and different ways of showing what they know, and some ways of kind of pacing themselves in general, I find like it kind of levels the playing field, and maybe and with it paired with technology. So when I taught middle school computer science, I had my kids, for example, and it was not done in this format at all, but it was a project. The kids were supposed to learn multimedia skills. So I thought they would do a movie about themselves, and they, an iMovie. And what they did is I gave them a checklist with different phases of the project of this is what you need to do step by step. And then they all went at their different pace, and we had about 6 weeks to get it done. And they needed to pick some aspect of what they were interested in. So I had kids that would borrow a video camera and take it home and like do, you know, film themselves doing yo-yo tricks or, you know, funny things like that. And they had to include a certain amount of images and a certain amount of information and audio. And you know what? It worked, and they were all helping each other. It was awesome. And I would help them. They would help themselves. They'd come in at lunch and work on it if they needed to. And every single fifth grade kid, 125 kids in that fifth grade, had a movie by the end of the 6 weeks. So, so using the technology and giving it some leeway, and you know, like if they were an advanced student in a project like that, they could really go to town with it. There's so many advanced features of iMovie at the time and things like that that they could add on to it and make it more sophisticated. That would allow for you know, a stronger student to be more creative. And it was structured enough that kids who could, you know, just get like 5 images together, they could get something together. Maybe it wasn't as fancy as others, but they could do it, and they felt successful by finishing something. So I don't know if that's a great example, but I think when you have enough outlets for kids, maybe they'll play to their own strengths, and maybe they'll keep up the pace a little bit more. I don't know. But maybe we'll find some ideas for that as we go along. So if you've not seen Understand by Design, you should definitely be familiar with it. There's some articles in our Google Classroom about it and how it works and some examples. So this is one methodology that a lot of schools are adopting, and I think it's pretty high quality. Another one it's easy to kind of get confused with is Universal Design by Learning. And this is, for special ed people, this is something that you guys may want to pay attention. UDL it's not just for special ed kids. It's designed for everyone. It's making the material more accessible in different ways for all your students. And I know schools that have adopted this as well as kind of a school-wide approach. It originally came from a group called CAST. And CAST is, their website is, let's see. Oh, here's their lesson plan exchange for UDL. Yeah, Ruby, you might like this. And maybe this would also help with differentiation. So this is CAST's website where you can find lessons that they've done in this approach, or you can you can build your lessons in here, which I think is kind of cool. So it's a tool. Yeah, we do. We do use it in society without really realizing it. So how do you make things work for different populations is basically, you know, what I'm thinking here. Anyway, this is their resources or lessons and their collections in here, and you can build your own stuff in here, which might be useful. And I believe it's free. CAS is a nonprofit, and it's an amazing, amazing organization in general. It's like the special ed organization out there. Not the, but it's close to it. This site that I was showing you here is what explains UDL at a glance. And this is another one of my favorite websites. This is understood.org, which is for parents. And I have, I'm a parent of 2 kids with ADHD, and 1 kid has dysgraphia. And this is, understood.org is there are several organizations that support it, including LD Online and CAST and a few others. It's kind of a consortium of people. And they have materials that you can print out and give to parents. They have some sort of tool online that lets parents experience what it's like to have a disability. Also, and they have webinars all the time and Twitter chats, lots of really great resources. So, so this kind of gives you a little bit of a definition of what it looks like. So there's a video on this page, and I'm not an expert in any of these, so I'm just kind of introducing these to you and hope that you'll kind of dig in. But this framework allows you to develop lesson plans and assessments based on representation, action, and expression, and engagement. And this is what that teacher was not, the packet lady was not doing. She's not looking for multiple ways to motivate students. And I think ed tech can do that for you. So, so take a look at this, and you might feel like this might work for you. I think this is a really good approach. There are probably templates out there too that you could find to help you develop a lesson that's UDL based. Another approach that relates directly to ed tech is SAMR. Have you guys heard of SAMR before? That new technology, new term to you? This is, and this is, I don't know if I would use this for lesson design, but I think it's something to take into consideration the activities that you're planning for. So SAMR is a model that was developed by a guy in Maine named Dr. Ruben Pentadora. And if you're not familiar with the state of Maine, they've had a one-to-one laptop program for over 15 years for all of their middle and high school students. Their governor, who's now their senator, Angus King, years ago had a surplus of money. And if you're not familiar with Maine, most people live along the coast. It's pretty rural, very small population. And he thought he would take that money and fund technology in schools in order to prepare kids for a new and changing world. And so Ruben was one of the researchers that's kind of studied the Maine initiative over several years. And he decided that there were different kinds of activities based on activities that, for instance, so substitution is when you're using, instead of flashcards, paper, cardboard flashcards, you're using digital flashcards. You're substituting a tool for another. There's no major change to how it works and the experience that's delivered to students. And then augmentation is when there's a direct tool substitute with a functional improvement. So I have to think of some examples of these. I should have thought about these ahead of time. The modification means the tech allows the task to be designed, and then redefinition means that new things happen that were previously inconceivable without the use of the technology. And what has happened is, I think a lot of teachers, there's a lot of resources here on this page about how this relates to, here somebody has mapped Bloom's taxonomy to the different levels of SAMR. I think what's been problematic with this is that teachers think that, oh, you must not be a good teacher if you're teaching at the substitution level. I think people get a little judgmental about their own work or whatever because of this. And what's important to keep in mind with this model is sometimes you're going to be doing things at the substitution level, like using a Google Doc is not a transformational use of technology, right? It's probably a substitution level type of thing. Instead of handwriting something, you're typing it digitally. But, that's okay. That's fine. You want to hit that redefinition level once in a while and get and improve your level of sophistication of use of technology as you get more used to incorporating it into your classroom. So I see like the substitution augmentation levels as things that will make things more productive for you and your students and more efficient. And then the more creative assignments are probably addressing the modification and redefinition types of activities or levels. So this is, a lot of schools have glommed onto this, but they're kind of lockstep with it. And I want you to think about, you're going to be going up and down that SAMR ladder, hopefully in your classroom. But you do want to make sure that you're trying to hit the modification and redefinition levels more often than not, I guess, because that's going to be the deeper use of technology in your classroom. So if you ever go to an EdTech conference, you're going to see a lot about this. So here's some examples here. So substitution would be taking notes in the notes tool that comes in on the iPad or on your Mac, or doing research. Augmentation would be taking notes in Evernote. If you wanted to modify, I don't know what Sling Note is, but you're curating information, that would be modification. And the redefinition would be sharing notebooks and collaborating in Evernote, because you couldn't possibly do that before without that technology. So these are some good examples of what that looks like. There's a lot of people have really, really jumped on this bandwagon, so you'll see lots of examples on this Kathy Schrock page if you're interested in investigating this. So look at SAMR as a way of kind of assessing how sophisticated, I guess, your use of technology is within a lesson. And I wanted to make sure I pointed that out. Then another model that I really know very little about is hyperdocs. And these three women here have written a book about it, and there's a bunch of them that are they have a bunch of examples here on this website. Let's see if I can find out where they are. So, and they have templates. So here are some templates some examples that they and other people have produced. So let's see, let me find the science. Oh, and here's these are hyperdocs that have been aligned to the SAMR model. Ooh, that looks really cool. I'm going to click on science and see what we can find in science. So what they've done is created examples and put them into a Google Drive. And they're made by all different kinds of people. So let's look at the solar system one here. And you can always copy these docs to your own drive, by the way. So what they do is, this is like a structure for kids to do independent work. There's a hook. There's an independent application with directions, and then some sort of assessment, and then then there's an extension of the learning. Really simple. So this is something that you would give to the kids for them to do work. And I actually think this would be, at least, I would use this. I guess this is a little bit of kind of a blended learning approach, where I don't think this substitutes for the teacher. I feel like this is a little bit of a digital worksheet. But if you have a sub coming in your classroom, maybe this would work. Maybe this is something you do on Fridays when you want them to do a little bit more independent work after doing small group work. I think you could do it in all different kinds of ways. So it's basically making a Google Doc with hyperlinks to different activities that you want your students to do. And for some reason, the teachers have really got, I mean, I think this is very creative. Let me go back to that. Let's see what other ones they have here. And I think you'll find some that are made by other teachers. I think they vary in quality too, by the way. So here's, let's see, Winter Holiday Master. Let's see what this is. And they have templates that you can use here as well. So it's kind of, to me, it feels a little bit like a scavenger hunt. These are different games and things like that. I mean, I don't know if I'm sold on this, but teachers really, really, really love this. So I'm going to put this link here in the chat so that you can take a look at that. So this is another approach to lesson planning and to designing things for your students. And then the last thing I want to show you before we get into tools, and let's see how we're doing for time. Oh my gosh, we're almost out of time. I always overplan. This is a project that I helped with a number of years ago, and they continue to use this model. And this is at Columbia College. It was a project for Chicago Public Schools. And what they did was they paired in two schools that were struggling. They paired a digital media artist, somebody who was a digital media photographer or, spoken word artist or whatever, with a classroom teacher who was the content and curriculum expert. And together they designed these units based on these 3 C's of consuming, creating, connecting, these 21st century skills. And I really loved it. And they also had 6 pillars that were attached to it too. So this is a little bit of an advanced thing. Like, I don't think you guys are necessarily going to be doing this right now, but I think this is for teachers who've been doing this a while in general, this might be really interesting to you, this whole convergence project. And these were their 6 pillars of instructional design that they try to incorporate into things and teach to their students. Authentic participation, choice of expression, collaboration, critical response, iterative learning, and play. These are the 21st century soft skills that we want kids to develop. So that's kind of an advanced example. What's the... So Laura's asking me about OneDrive versus Google Drive. Let me quickly go in and show you Drive. I don't know if there's any, I don't use OneDrive at all, but you can always upload things in different formats that you've created in something else. If you go to Drive and you click on New, you can upload any file, and you can store it in there, no problem. So if it's created in it's a Microsoft Word document or whatever, you can do that. But what will happen is if I upload a Word document here, I'll get a little menu at the top that will tell me how I can convert that to a Google Doc. So I don't think it's going to work at all necessarily the same, or you may lose some formatting. If you've done something in a PDF, you can upload it and store it in Google Drive for sure. You just may not be able to edit it. One of the things, if in your Google Drive, under the More menu, we talked about this in one of our first sessions, there are these apps that you can connect to your Google Drive to do file conversions. So this Cloud Convert one is one, and I have no idea what it does. It will convert anything. So you install this into your Drive, and you can convert files that you upload. So these are the file formats that you can convert. Now, I don't know if there's something that specifically works with OneDrive. Let's see if there's something in here that says OneDrive. Yeah, so here you can convert. So what I would do in Google Drive, Laura, is I would add this this add-on. And you do that by going to the new, and then it says more at the bottom, and you'll see this kind of little store. It'll pop up, and you install this. And the next time you upload a drive file, a OneDrive file, it should give you this option to convert it, I believe. So good question. All right, really quickly. So lesson planning tools. I'm going to move right now to, so I got a speed talk here. So in our Google Classroom, I have chunked things up for you. Here's the link for tonight's webinar. Here are the slides. These are some general links to approaches for lesson planning that we just went over, and more. So if you want to kind of dig into the things that we talked about, it's all there. There's project-based learning, etc. And the next piece was some tools that will let you do your lesson planning online. So the one that looks very interesting to me is Common Curriculum. And most of these are free, but for advanced features, there may be a price for them. And sometimes schools will buy a whole subscription for a school. So I think you guys are going to have to explore these on your own because we don't have that much time. But you might make your life a lot easier if you start putting your lesson plans online. Either A, design your own template in Google Docs and just copy it every time you need to use it, or use a tool like this that may allow you to bring other resources and things like that into it and streamline your process. Because we all know teachers are working so hard these days, and the lesson planning process can be really tedious, and this might make things more efficient for you. So there is a whole list here of other tools that will do it. As some of you know, I've been doing some work with Edmodo, and I wouldn't call it necessarily a lesson planning tool, but it's a way that you can send digital resources to your students and organize things digitally for them. So that's another platform. Edmodo also has a Spotlight section, which is similar to Teachers Pay Teachers, and you can find resources in this Spotlight that you can use in your classroom. So if you're looking for a math lesson, or if you're looking for a website that teaches probability or whatever, you might find some lesson ideas and websites in here to supplement your lesson. So Edmodo is another platform for kind of organizing your life digitally with your students. And you can send work to them and they can turn it into you, very similar to Google Classroom. So these are some other ones here that you may want to look at. Planboard is very popular. I just created an account in Teachers.io today. It looks pretty simple. These are all tools that will help you get organized. Lenspace has lots of resources that you can pull into your lessons and make it more interactive. And then the last section here is a bunch of sites that have existing lessons. And so I'm thinking, so here's the UDL one that I showed you earlier. This one I think is awesome, and maybe this is too much for people who are working with younger kids, but TED, you've seen TED Talks, right? They've created a series of videos based on people's TED Talks and other content on different instructional area, different topics that might be interesting to teachers. You can just show the video and do the lesson. There are lessons in here, but you can also build a lesson and an assessment in the TED Ed platform, and it's totally free too. So make sure you check that one out. I think that's pretty compelling. Share My Lesson is an example of kind of a lesson repository. This one is run by the AFT, I believe. And so you can find lessons here on, it's like that Edmodo Spotlight, but it might be, it might be, it's probably a little bit more organized. So here's one I could use for next week. Classroom management and teaching strategies. Yeah, so there's stuff for you and for students in here, by the way. And that's Share My Lesson. Lots of different things in there that you can look at. What other ones do I? All of these are really good. CurryKey is all open source. Oh, the first two that are listed here I wanted to show you. Guru is, I think it was started by somebody who used to work at Google. And what you can do here is you can search for resources and create your own kind of playlist for students within their portal. And I'm taking 5 million steps to log into it. And again, like for preschool, I don't know if this is going to be that exciting. But you can create a course for your students and have all their content, or for other teachers who can use it for professional development as well. And I'm trying to think if I've created anything here before. Yeah, I have. So you can make, and I think you can also repurpose content developed by other people. But it's kind of one-stop shopping, searching and building and putting everything together in one spot, and it's free. And it's called Guru. So this is, it lets you kind of plan out exactly what you're doing. This person's gone through a lot of detail. So there's quizzes, there's videos, there's pre-tests. I mean, this is probably, not for elementary, obviously. And then the kids, you give kids a code, and they come in there and they do the work, and I think you can assess it in here. The other one that's similar to this too is, and I know a lot of people have like ditched regular textbooks with this content, is CK12, which is another Silicon Valley foundation. It's free. And you can build, there are all these lessons and activities and things that you can do with your students and set them up to learn with your help. So how this works is this is a little dry for me. Seems to be, I don't think this is changing the learning activity. It's giving kids a different way to learn traditional content. I don't think it's radically different, but if you have to organize your content in some sort of coherent way, and then the students can come in here and take, your assignments and quizzes and things like that, it makes sense. So those are two resources that I think are a little bit different than the other ones in terms of finding lessons. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you guys, what kind of resources, where do you go for lessons? Oh, the high school, okay. So can you guys give me a little feedback? Because I know we're wrapping up here, but I always have too much to tell you. Do you just go to the internet and Google? Okay. So, and when you do that, when we do our research webinar, Ruby, I'll give you some tips for refining your search, because that can be overwhelming when you go to Google. And if you search for a topic, also, things may not be that current. So I'll give you some tips on how to use Google search as fully as possible with that kind of thing. Any other places that you guys like to go to find lessons?
I don't have anything standard that I use. It's more of kind of like Ruby. It's kind of a hit or miss. I do have a few bookmarked sites that I don't even know what the name of them are.
Okay.
But also, fortunately, I can, because I teach high schoolers, they have ideas of how to do things too. So they're a good resource.
Yeah, yeah. And what with high schoolers, what's interesting to me is YouTube. The power of YouTube. That's because they want to learn how to play the guitar, they go to YouTube, and half the people on YouTube who are YouTube stars, I have no idea who they are. But they know who they are. Like in high school, I'd say one of my favorite things for high schoolers is Crash Course. And have you seen these videos, Laura?
No.
Oh, they're so good. And they have curriculum that goes with it too. And and these are, John Green, who wrote Fault in Our Stars. I don't know if you've ever seen him. He's a super nerd guy. He and his brother do this website. And they're like this is them up there at the top. That's a picture of them. But their content's really good. So yeah, YouTube is an amazing resource for things. And I want to say YouTube has come out with something called YouTube Learn. I just saw an announcement about it. Maybe it's not out yet. I just saw an article for it. Anyway, we can go into more of this too. If you have more questions next week, what I'd like you to do is if you can get hold of a template that your school uses or anything between now and next week, bring it and share it with us if you're coming next week. That was my homework for you. But don't feel like you're obligated to do it. It's still summer. I don't want you to feel like you have tons of homework. And then again, this is our upcoming, what's coming up in our upcoming series. Next week we'll talk about classroom management, which I think is helpful to know, and we can brainstorm some ideas. We can talk about regular classroom management, and then managing devices in your classroom too. I think we'll probably cover both of those. Then we'll talk about where do you find more PD opportunities that are free and readily available on the internet if you want to keep learning. Then we'll talk about research, and then our last one will be on fostering digital citizenship. The other thing, Ruby, I was thinking of you particularly this week because I'm wrapping up my work with Edmodo, and not to, obviously I'm paid by them, but I think this is a really good event, and I thought if you like this kind of thing that you're doing right now, this is coming up in August, and what they do with Edmodo is they have keynote speakers. Everything is completely virtual. You sign up. There's an Edmodo group you can join and network with other teachers. This is the whole schedule. And they have big, fancy keynote speakers, but they also have regular teachers from all over the world who are going to be talking about how they use Edmodo to go paperless in their classroom or to do flipped learning or whatever. But it's not just all about Edmodo. It's about some of their partners. Like they use Quizlet for quizzes and Common Sense Media. They're going to be doing a panel. So a lot of these people are really, really good and really experienced with EdTech, and you might find them interesting. The guy who's the opening keynote is a big international speaker. He runs something called the PISA test. Anyway, it's completely free. On Tuesday, August 7th, it's in English, and then on August 8th, they do a half-day session completely in Spanish. So if you know anybody who's a Spanish speaker who'd like to partake in that, they're more than welcome to. So that's coming up August 7th and 8th. Thank you for coming, everyone, tonight. I really appreciate it. And we're always a small but mighty group. And if you have any questions or anything you want to offer, please email me or post in our group. And I'm here to stick around for a few more minutes. But if you have to go, you got to go. Please do. But thanks for coming, everyone, and have a good week. Or actually 2 weeks. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Oh, the code. Let me pull that up right